What's up, guys? My name's Brandon, and welcome back to Apple Weekly. In this episode, we're going to discuss iOS 17 and what's coming next. We're going to discuss Apple's upcoming Wonderlust event, a major Apple Pay security flaw, more iPhone 15 leaks, a crazy AirTags story, and much more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with everything new in the world of Apple, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below and make sure you have notifications turned on. All right, so let's start by talking about iOS 17. But first off, if you want to get your hands on this wallpaper, this is taken from my brand new Magma wallpaper collection, which I'll leave linked down in the description below. It's over on brandonbutch.com. I think you guys will like it. There are 9 different color variations, so hopefully you like at least one of the colors in there. But anyways, iOS 17 Beta 8 was released this past week, and while it wasn't really any different from Beta 7, there were some minor changes, especially in the state of mind right here. When you go to log your emotion for the day, you will notice some differences in the animations. So it looks like the little ripples that you see right there. Shout out to my wallpaper collection called Ripple, but you will notice that they are a little bit quicker and just more fluid, it seems, than they were in Beta 7. Now the colors remain the same, but it's just the animation you see around when you kind of scroll through like this where it's different than Beta 7. They've been constantly tweaking this section. But aside from that, there's really nothing else new going from Beta 7 to Beta 8. Now I did do a Geekbench test and we scored a 2665 on the single core and a 6561 on the multi-core. And if we compare that to Beta 7, the single core is actually a little bit higher, but the multi-core is lower on Beta 8. But I wouldn't put too much stock into these Geekbench scores. You know, this is the one from Beta 7 right here, and then here is the one from Beta 8. So actually it looks like the single core is higher in that instance as well. So yeah, not a big difference, you know, not big enough to actually make a difference in the real world. And plus I've been using it throughout the week and I haven't noticed a difference in performance. And the same goes with battery life. Honestly, I've not been able to tell any difference in battery life here on my iPhone 14 Pro. So if we go over to my last 24 hours, can't really tell a big difference there. But if we go to the last 10 days, you can see we have a pretty consistent chart here when it comes to the battery usage and the activity. So obviously Tuesday right there is when I installed Beta 8. Everything to the left of that is going to be Beta 7. Now also on Tuesday, Apple did announce the Wonderlust event, the iPhone 15 event, and it's going to be a hybrid event. And if you were a subscriber to my Apple Den newsletter, you would have seen where I put my expectations for this event. But if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, basically what we're expecting at this event are the iPhone 15, so the 15, 15 Plus, 15 Pro, and 15 Pro Max. Now there are recent murmurs of a 15 Ultra, but I personally do not think that's going to happen. I think there would have been leaks long ago if that were to happen this year. But along with the iPhones, we're expecting to see an Apple Watch Series 9, an Apple Watch Ultra 2, and also potentially an iPad Mini 7. And then along with that, we should see a new USB-C case for the AirPods. So yeah, not a ton to talk about with iOS 17 Beta 8 specifically, but let's take a look at the calendar and see what we have ahead. So next week is going to be the week of September 4th. I cannot believe it's already Techtember, but so the week of the 4th, I would not expect to see any release. Now, Apple could do an RC1 and then an RC2 the week after, but most of the time, Apple just skips the week before the RC. So don't count on anything coming for iOS at least next week. We could see a macOS release or something like that, but I would not expect iOS 17 Beta 9 next week. It's always possible, but it's just unlikely. So Apple's event is going to be on September 12th. That is the event that we just discussed, and that is going to be when we see the RC version of iOS 17 and the other software get released. Usually right after that event is when we see those released. And then the following week after that, most likely on Monday the 18th, is when we will see iOS 17 get released to the general public, the final full release. Now, it could come really any day up until the 22nd, which is the predicted day for the iPhone 15s to launch. We know the event is on the 12th, but the launch date is most likely going to be the 22nd. So it could come from the 18th to the 22nd. But again, usually these releases come on Mondays. All right, so anyways, let's talk about some more iOS related news before we move on to the main news section of this episode. And the first thing I want to talk about is macOS Sonoma, because in Beta 7 of macOS Sonoma, which we got this week, there are over 100 additional new wallpapers. Now, these are the same aerial screensavers slash wallpapers that we have on the Apple TV. So they're nothing, brand new, but it's cool that Apple put all of these into macOS. I really wish they would do that for iOS. I mean, at least give us something more than just one wallpaper every year. I feel like nobody likes the fact that we only get one wallpaper every year. Also this week, Apple killed off the iTunes movie trailers application along with the website. So it looks like Apple's just trying to push everybody to Apple TV and kind of phase out those old iTunes websites and applications. applications. However, there is a brand new application that could kind of replace that application and then some. Like, it has more than just what that application had, but it's called Kernel. So this comes from fellow creator Nikias Molina, and you can see here I have the application pulled up. It is such a clean design. It's very Apple-like. It's very like Apple TV-like, even with the glyph icons on the bottom. Just the whole interface, no ads, nothing like that. And it's a great way to kind of see upcoming movies, see what your friends are watching. You can see all of the details about the movie. It's kind of like IMDb, but a much cleaner version than IMDb. So you can see the cast, the trailer, all of that straight from the website. Everything is very responsive and quick as well, and the animations are solid. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And I know you're probably sick of hearing about iPhone 15 rumors, but we have even more to share in this segment. Now, don't worry, it's not going to last forever. I'm going to try to speed through these because I know you're tired of hearing about it, but we have news on Apple's upcoming iPhone 15 cases. So we know that Apple is transitioning away from their leather cases, their real leather cases, to allegedly fine woven cases. At least that's what they're calling it. So this is most likely going to be just vegan leather cases. And based on these leaked images, Apple could be kind of branding this vegan leather as fine woven. That's going to be their marketing term, and call it the best vegan leather ever. So it'll be interesting to see how these compare to the actual leather cases and how they fare over time. Also this week, we saw new dummy units of the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro that show a more realistic look at the color options. And these images were shared on X by Sonny Dixon. So pretty interesting to see these colors in an actual real life environment and not just renders. Ming-Chi Kuo gave us some updates a few days ago on the production side of things. So he said that the iPhone 15 Pro Max was in fact the last project to kick off. It was the last one of the bunch to kick off, so its mass production was lagging behind other iPhone 15 models. However, he did say that changing the supplier shipment ratio has resolved the panel issue that we heard about for a while. And then also there were issues with the battery and the frame, but those have also been resolved mainly by improving production yield. And then in a separate report from Kuo, he mentions that the 15 Pro Max will definitely be the best-selling model due to the periscope lens. So he says, quote, iPhone 15 Pro Max, the most expensive iPhone, accounts for 35 to 40% of iPhone 15 series shipments, the highest share. iPhone 15 Pro Max shipments in the second half of 24 also grew 10 to 20% year over year compared to the 14 Pro Max in the same period. This means that Apple is optimistic about the selling point of the periscope lens, which is only available on the Pro Max. Now, looking a little bit further ahead, after this Wonderlust event, Apple is going to host another event in October, at least according to Mark Gurman, who's reporting that the new Macs are going to be coming at this event. So a new M3 MacBook Air and M3 MacBook Pro should be coming at this October event. And then moving into early next year, Gurman also is reporting that there's going to be a major overhaul to the next iPad Pro. So he's saying that we're going to have an 11-inch and a 13-inch model of this new iPad Pro. It's going to have OLED screens instead of micro LED like we have on the 12.9-inch Pro currently. It's going to have the M3 chip. And most importantly, at least most intriguing and interesting to me, is that there's going to be a new Magic Keyboard with a bigger trackpad and more. Gurman says that the revamped Magic Keyboard is going to make the iPad Pro, quote, look even more like a laptop than the current setup. Okay, so now we need to talk about a very serious Apple Pay security flaw. So let me just read this segment real quick. In the mid-afternoon on one Saturday earlier this month, the target got on the New York subway. I knew what station they entered the subway at and at what specific time. They then entered another station a few hours later. If I had kept monitoring this person, I would have figured out the subway station they often start a journey at, which is near where they live. I would also know what specific time this person may go to the subway each day. During all of this monitoring, I wasn't anywhere near the rider. I didn't even need to see them with my own eyes. Instead, I was sitting inside an apartment following their movements through a feature on an MTA website, which runs the New York City subway system. With their consent, I had entered the rider's credit card information and punched that into the MTA website for OMNY, the subway's contactless payments system. After a few seconds, the site churned out the rider's travel history for the past 7 days. No other verification required. And if you're wondering, isn't Apple Pay supposed to block all that information? Aren't they supposed to mask that information? The answer is yes. That's what Apple has told us. That's been the core of Apple Pay for its entire, ever since it was introduced by Apple. It's supposed to mask that information and use keys like one-time keys and not actually, have access to that information. Apple shouldn't have access to that information and merchants should not have access to that information. So how is this happening? The MTA has shut down that section of the website so you can no longer see that anymore, but that still doesn't tell us why this was happening in the first place if nobody's able to see, or if nobody's supposed to be able to see that information when they use Apple Pay as their payment. So we really need some explanation from Apple right here, because as of right now, Apple Pay, I wouldn't trust it as much as we may have in the past. Now, of course, this is not anything to worry about like money being stolen or anything like that. It's more so used for like tracking purposes and things like that. If you're using public transportation, that's where I say I'm worried for. But yeah, I think Apple needs to address this ASAP. And hopefully by next week, I will have an update on this story for you. And then finally, just as tradition, let's talk about another crazy AirTag story. So a man in Nashville, Tennessee had his 2016 Charger Scat Pack stolen. Of course he did. And thankfully, he not only had an AirTag inside of that car, but also he got lucky because the police department was actually willing to help, unlike a few previous stories that we've seen where the cops just don't do anything about it. But anyways, once the victim gave the police the location of the AirTag, the aviation unit up in the air located the car and started following it. The suspect who stole the car eventually parked at a barber shop, of all places, and went inside with a passenger. I guess that he just was living his normal life in a stolen car. Kind of weird. But anyway, that's when officers in the air gave a description of the man, the suspect, to the officers that were on the ground, and then they went into the barbershop and arrested the 18-year-old. Police said that this 18-year-old suspect had a brown backpack at the time of his arrest that contained a screwdriver, a vehicle key fob, and a vehicle key reprogramming device. And along with that was a handgun, 49 grams of marijuana, a digital scale, and numerous small plastic baggies. Anyways, thanks to this AirTag, he was arrested and he remains in custody for vehicle theft and unauthorized use of a vehicle along with drug charges. His bond is set at $28,500 and he's not eligible for release yet. So bravo for the AirTag being used for a good reason here, unlike a few of the previous stories that we've covered. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you enjoyed the new Magma wallpaper pack that I just released. And if you made it to the end of this video, I'll actually give you guys a code. So if you want 50% off of the Magma wallpaper pack, just put in the coupon code I made it. I just randomly thought of that. So if you want to use that and get 50% off, go ahead, be my guest. I hope you enjoy it, and I definitely appreciate your support for that. It really helps me out, and supports me as a creator. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I also would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up, and also again, make sure to subscribe if you're not already so you stay up to date with all the latest Apple news, which if you're watching this by now, you're probably subscribed. If not, log into your account and hit that sub button. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.